Now, as many of you know, I am a huge lover of video games, but one thing I love just as much is horror films. I am a huge horror movie film buff and I love a lot of them, but one of my favorite things that can happen is when horror and video games come together to make, of course, horror video games. Horror in video gaming is a really big genre and it has its own genres within it, and one that I want to talk about the most today is particularly the genre of survival horror. The survival horror series in gaming is one of the most popular and well recognized, and it's actually one of the very first that was ever invented. However, survival horror didn't really start to blow up until the late 90s thanks to games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. While those two game series brought a lot of fame and attention to the genre, I feel like it is necessary to mention a few games that came out before and paved the way. A lot of games came out in the late 80s and 90s that paved the way for Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Games such as Alone in the Dark, Clock Tower, and even Sweet Home. The late 90s were a very important and great time for gaming because the boundaries and limitations were being stretched and pushed every single day, with game studios being able to make bigger and better games due to the new hardware. This helped every game genre, but no more than the survival horror genre. Capcom and Konami took advantage of this. In the late 90s, Capcom released a little game known as Resident Evil. Have you ever heard of it? Yeah, the game was so big and so great at the time that not only did it push the limitations and boundaries further than ever before, but it has defined the survival horror genre ever since. Within the next few years, Capcom would release games such as Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, which would become two of the biggest games not only in the series, but of all time. These games defined the world of survival horror and have been fan favorites ever since. And with Capcom having three of the best games to ever exist as their first three games in that series, of course they would continue it. They would go on to make a lot more bangers in the series, and then eventually hit a very dark period that we don't like to talk about before making their return to their roots and making some bangers once again. Konami would also follow a very similar route. They would release their own survival horror games that could compete with Resident Evil, known as Silent Hill. First, Silent Hill released on the PlayStation 1, and it pushed the boundaries for the survival horror genre more than ever before, and it is still to this day easily one of the best looking PlayStation 1 games to exist. Just like Capcom, Konami would cash in on the success of their first game, releasing Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3 only a few years later, which would become two of the biggest games not only in its own genre, but also in the entirety of gaming. Also like Capcom, they would release a few more bangers after that before hitting a really dark period that once again we do not like to talk about before having a resurgence a few years later. Both series serve as the blueprint for horror games that would release over the next 20 years. Now after that history lesson, let me tell you why I love the genre. Obviously, as you can guess, Resident Evil and Silent Hill are my favorite series, and there is a very good reason for that. One reason I love both of these series is because of the atmosphere, the fact that it can be both terrifying and also kind of comforting at the same time. The atmosphere of these games is really immersive, and no matter how outlandish or far-fetched that these games can be, they still have a really good sense of making you feel like you are in that world. Resident Evil 2 does a really great job with this by making you feel like you are actually in Raccoon City stuck in a police department by filling the map with a lot of tension and a lot of lore. The game adds tension by making resources limited, filling the map with zombies and monsters that could kill you and want to clap your cheeks, camera angles that make it absolutely impossible to see what the fuck is around the corner, and a beautiful soundtrack that shows you to the bone and makes you want to piss yourself and cry at the same time. The game is filled with so much lore to help make you feel immersed. Each room in this map is filled with some sort of diary or newspaper article or a piece of paper with a bunch of words on it to help you understand what's going on in Raccoon City outside of what is accessible to the player. Now, while Resident Evil and Silent Hill are two different types of games and have their own unique stories, Silent Hill does the exact same thing that Resident Evil tried to do. Silent Hill is really good at adding tension by giving you such thick fog that it makes you feel like Stevie Wonder because you cannot see shit. I both love and hate how it feels walking around in Silent Hill 2 Remake, because just walking around is super terrifying. Hearing your little radio make little noises to let you know an enemy is near, but you can't see them because there is too much fog around you. And even though the fog makes it impossible to see anything, it still does a really great job at making you feel like somebody is watching you the entire time. Just like Resident Evil, you can find lore that is spread all around the map as you listen to a soundtrack that will come in every once in a while to break up the eerie silence. The atmosphere and vibes impact another reason why I really love these games, which is the story. With many survival horror games, especially the aforementioned series, the story is so well written and deep compared to a lot of other games and other genres. This helps make the game feel more interesting and engaging. Instead of just being a game where you go around and kill a bunch of monsters, you actually get to learn something about the world you are exploring. Even games such as The Quarry, games where you have a bunch of dialogue options and a bunch of different possible endings. This helps give the game more depth and more replayability. Instead of just roaming around Raccoon City and killing anything that moves, you also get to learn on how it got this way and who is behind it. Instead of just killing kinky monsters in the streets of Silent Hill, you also get to learn on why they are caked up on a Tuesday. While I love the action and combat of killing a bunch of monsters in these games, easily one of my favorite parts of it is just going around and finding lore, because once you get a bunch of different pieces of information and lore, you really can put it together and it adds some sort of mystery behind it. Another one of my favorite things about a lot of survival horror games is puzzles, and while I am a huge Resident Evil fan and Resident Evil will always be my #1 favorite genre, Silent Hill does a way better job at this. The puzzles are absurd and sometimes really dumb, but games like Silent Hill can make this seem less dumb by the fact that James is literally insane and all of this is going on in his head. While running around the RPD back and forth can get tedious, it's still really fun doing this zombified Easter egg hunt, trying to find keyed items, and finding this crank, wondering why I have it and what is it for. I also just love being scared. It makes the games feel a lot more interesting and never feel boring or dull. Constant rush of being chased by a giant monster in a trench coat that's trying to clap my cheeks is both super exciting and also very close to heart attack inducing. And also, can you blame Mr. X for wanting to clap Claire's cheeks? I mean, we all want to. This sense of fear can also be experienced in online horror games such as Friday the 13th and Dead by Daylight. It is super fun and also very terrifying when you're playing against your friend online, trying to get these generators to work so you can escape the map as they are trying to kill you. For me, while these games can be terrifying at times, and I have pooped myself a number of times just playing Silent Hill 2 or Resident Evil 2 when I was like 3 years old, I still find a deep, loving comfort from them, and maybe that's just because I'm insane. I don't know if it's because my brain immediately associates horror with the holiday season, but I find movies like Scream, Final Destination 3, I Know What You Did Last Summer to be very comforting to watch. Also, I think half this reason is just because they all contain celebrity crushes of mine that I absolutely love, so maybe that's why they're comforting, or maybe I'm just insane. Overall, while there are many great games and many great genres, I personally love the horror genre the best because they are just great. That line sounded like it was written by a 5th grader, I'm not gonna lie. And I know in this video I mostly talked about 2 series, but it's kind of hard not to when talking about the survival horror genre because both Silent Hill and Resident Evil are easily not only the biggest in the genre, but the most important. Overall, my thoughts and my advice to the people watching this video is that you should go pick up a horror game. Even if you don't like the horror genre, I recommend you give one a try. Play Resident Evil, play Silent Hill, play The Quarry, play Clock Tower, play anything that has some sort of spooky scaries or just really hot women in them. But anyways, thank you all for watching my goofy little video. I hope you liked it. If you didn't, thanks for stopping by anyways. Love you. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I'll see all you beautiful people in the next one. Stay safe, have a happy holidays, and watch a lot of horror movies. Yeah. Bye.